The wind howled across the narrow dirt road as Maria clutched the small suitcase to her chest. Her wedding veil, made of a fabric so thin it could barely be called cloth, fluttered like a torn banner behind her. She had dreamed of love once, like any young woman does. Of candlelight and whispered promises. But those dreams had been stripped away the day her father told her, in his stern, unyielding voice, "You'll marry him, Maria. He may be poor, but he agreed to take you. And that's more than most would do." The him in question was Daniel. A man the villagers called a pauper, a man who had nothing to his name but the tattered clothes on his back in a small, crumbling cottage at the edge of town. To marry him was to be exiled from the comfortable life she had known, to trade silk dresses for patched skirts and full plates for empty bowls. Maria had no choice. And so, at just 19, her life was handed over to a man who couldn't even afford shoes without holes in the soles. The villagers whispered behind their hands, their eyes filled with pity, or worse, mockery. "The pretty one married to the beggar," they said, shaking their heads. When she first stepped into Daniel's cottage, Maria thought her heart would collapse inside her chest. The walls were bare, the floorboards creaked, and the roof leaked when the rain came. There was no bed frame, only a pile of straw covered with an old quilt. The air smelled faintly of smoke and damp wood. "This is home," Daniel said softly, almost apologetically. He had a voice that carried no pride, no confidence, only a kind of quiet endurance. Maria turned away, blinking back tears. She told herself she would endure. She would do what was expected. But she swore she would never love him. The days stretched into weeks, the weeks into months. Life was harsh. Maria woke before dawn, gathering water from the well, scrubbing clothes until her hands were raw, cooking what little they had, often nothing more than thin soup and stale bread. She worked until her bones ached, and bitterness grew inside her heart like a shadow. Daniel worked too. Every morning he left before sunrise, taking odd jobs no one else wanted, hauling stones, mending fences, chopping wood for the wealthy farmers who barely noticed him. He came home long after dark, exhausted, his hands bleeding, his back bent. Yet no matter how tired he was, he always greeted her with the same words, "You must be tired too. Sit, I'll light the fire." At first, Maria met his kindness with silence. She couldn't understand him. He had nothing, yet he offered what little he had as though it were treasure. Slowly, almost against her will, she began to notice the small things. How Daniel always left the bigger portion of food for her, pretending he wasn't hungry. How he patched her shoes before his own. How, when she shivered at night, he shifted closer, trying to share his warmth without a word. Still, she resisted. Love, she thought, could not live in poverty. One bitter winter evening, as snow piled high against the door, Maria sat by the fire, her face pale and weary. Daniel entered, his arms heavy with chopped wood. His coat was soaked through, his fingers red with cold. Yet he smiled as though carrying gold. "Tomorrow will be worse," he said, setting down the logs. "But we'll have enough to keep warm." Maria wanted to ask him why he always smiled. Why he always gave, even when he had nothing. The words caught in her throat. Instead, she turned her face away. But that night, as he slept beside her, she lay awake, staring at the fragile roof above. For the first time, she wondered if perhaps wealth wasn't measured in coins or land. Perhaps it was measured in something else, something Daniel seemed to have in endless supply. The turning point came in spring. A fire broke out in the village, tearing through one of the barns. Flames lit the night sky, and neighbors shouted, scrambling to save what they could. Maria and Daniel ran to help, though they owned nothing worth burning. Inside the barn, a young boy was trapped. His cries pierced the crackling blaze. Villagers froze, fear pinning them in place. The roof groaned, ready to collapse. Without hesitation, Daniel charged in. "Daniel!" Maria screamed, her heart ripping apart. Moments felt like hours. Then, through smoke and fire, Daniel emerged, coughing, his face blackened, his clothes singed, but holding the child in his arms. The crowd erupted in gasps and tears. The boy's mother fell to her knees, sobbing, clutching her son. Daniel collapsed in the dirt, the child safe. Maria dropped beside him, her hands trembling as she touched his scorched skin. In that instant, her bitterness shattered like glass. She saw him not as a pauper, but as a man of courage, of selflessness, of immeasurable wealth of spirit. Tears spilled down her face as she whispered, "You could have died." He looked at her, weak but smiling, and said, "If we have nothing else in this life, let us at least give what we can." From that day, Maria's heart began to change. She worked alongside him not with resentment, but with quiet pride. They rebuilt the cottage, plank by plank, her hands blistered yet steady. She found herself laughing at his gentle jokes, finding warmth in his presence. At night, she no longer lay stiff and distant, she leaned into him, seeking his heartbeat. The villagers, too, began to see Daniel differently. The man they once called a beggar was now called a hero. Farmers offered him fair wages. Neighbors came by with food and supplies. Slowly, the cracks of poverty began to fill. But more importantly, Maria discovered a truth that would stay with her forever: the richest hearts are often found in the humblest of places. Years passed. The cottage blossomed into a home filled with laughter, with children's footsteps, with love that no gold could buy. Maria often thought back to the day she had walked down that dirt road, her heart heavy with dread. How blind she had been. For the man she was married off to, the pauper she once despised, had given her a life richer than she could have ever dreamed. And when their children grew, and their grandchildren gathered at their feet, Maria would tell them this: "Do not measure a man by the weight of his purse, but by the weight of his heart. I once thought I had been given nothing. But I was given everything.